In this unit, we'll talk about the spread and use of English in the Philippines. The Philippines became an American colony in 1898. However, it was declared independent in 1946. Under the colonial government, under the American colonial government, the medium instruction was English from grade 1 to higher education. From grade 1 on, the medium of instruction was English. There were two reasons for which English was used as a medium of instruction by the American colonial masters. One was that they felt that no other language was suitable to be used as a medium of instruction. The other was since the Americans felt that they were the champions of democracy, they thought that if the people in Philippines they were taught through English, they'll be able to influence their minds and will also influence their choice of democracy as a system of government as opposed to colonialism. So it was a part of these political designs of the USA to influence the minds of the people in the Philippines and train them or sympathize them or influence them to select democracy as a system of government. After some time, in 1937, the monolingual English policy was modified and a Tagalog-based national language was proclaimed as the official language or as the national language. So a language which was based on a native language called Tagalog was declared as a national language. This language is more commonly known as Filipino. So we call this language, general people call this language as Filipino, which is the national language of the Philippines. In 1939, this language, the national language, Filipino, was taught for the first time in the higher secondary school and in the fourth year of high school, which is the last year of the secondary school. It was then also made a compulsory subject for future teachers. So the teacher training included a mandatory module on this language. It became an official language in 1941. So earlier it was declared as a national language, but in 1941 it was made the official language. Now it is taught both in schools and colleges. So even after the independence, etc., the language, so it was not only that to assert their nationalism or something, this language was introduced in schools. It is still taught in schools and colleges both in the Philippines. In the 1970s, there was a rise in nationalistic sentiments in the Philippines. So there was a rise in nationalism in the 1970s, and as a result of this nationalistic kind of sentiment, a bilingual system of education was introduced. So under the influence of this feeling of nationalism, one area that people focused on was the use of the language, especially in the domain of education. So there was a demand for introducing Filipino as a medium of instruction or to introduce it in education. And under this pressure from the general public, bilingual education scheme was introduced in 1974. As a result of this bilingual education scheme, some of the subjects, especially in the social sciences, were taught in Filipino and the other subjects were taught in English. In Philippines, also, we see this ambivalence towards English, this mixed feeling of love and hate towards English as is found in Pakistan. So people show a lot of unhappiness, displeasure with English, complaining that it influences their culture and draws them away from their own language, etc. But at the same time, people make great efforts to learn English and feel proud of their knowledge or their competence in English. So we have a similar feeling in the Philippines, where people have these mixed feelings towards English, mixed feelings of love and hate. So there was a lot of stress on the use of Filipino, as has already been pointed out, between 1974 and 86, and it was introduced as a medium of instruction in schools, at least for some subjects. However, in the present day, we see that in the Philippines, people have realized the importance of English in the process of globalization. And everybody in the whole world, including the Philippines, now feels a need for an international language. So as a result of this need being felt for international language, we see a return to English in the Philippines as well. So English is used now even for the teaching of social sciences, a domain which was in the past reserved only for Filipino. So we see that first in the Philippines we had this monolingual English policy, which was then changed into a bilingual education scheme under the influence of nationalism in the Philippines, and the local language Filipino was introduced in schools for the teaching of some subjects, and now there's a return to learning of English, and it is again being used for teaching of all the subjects, including social sciences.